Hello guys, MonkeyBot here, and today we're going to be doing the last little bit before we start moving on to the DLC races. So we're going to be focusing on filling in the areas that are still kind of a little bit empty within Immortal Empires. I will be focusing mainly on the vampire count because I am a strong believer that we're going to be getting a Bloodline DLC at some point down the track, similar to the Champions of Chaos DLC. But then there's a couple of movements and a couple of legendary lords outside of the vampire counts that I will be mentioning as well. So before we start introducing the new legendary lords, let's start making a couple of movements. So we recently introduced in the last episode the Red Duke into Bretonnia, putting him extremely close to Heinrich. So now the Red Duke is in there, I think Heinrich should be moved slightly. In his lore, he is known to be around the Grey Mountains quite a bit, but instead of putting him in the North Grey Mountains, I'm going to move him down south into the Southern Grey Mountains in the province of Grimhold. This is going to give him a really nice defendable 4-settlement province. He will have to take out the Dwarfs in that location, and I think there's some Skaven there as well. Getting out of that first province may be a little bit tricky though, because you'll have to either go up against Gelt or Karl Franz, so being forced to deal with a legendary lord very early on might be a bit troublesome, but I think it's going to be a better location for him as a whole, giving the Red Duke a little bit of space and not just having two vampire legendary lords directly next to each other. But now this leaves that part of Bretonnia a little bit open up, so I'm also going to be moving Skulltaker up north slightly to where Heinrich used to be in Blackstone Fort. This is just to give him a little bit of space so he's not either going up against an Empire fort straight away or a Legendary Lord straight away. It just gives him a little bit more breathing room before he can actually stage his main assaults on Lou and Leoncoeur or the Empire or wherever he wants to go. So now we're moving on to the rest of the Vampire Count's Legendary Lords, and there's two bloodlines that are yet to be introduced. We've got the Blood Dragon with the Red Duke, which will likely be an FLC. We have already introduced Neferata for the Larmian bloodline, which I have placed in the Darklands. We've even got the Jade Vampires in Cathey, and we've had Von Carstein forever, and that leaves two more bloodlines that are yet to be introduced, the Stegoi and the Necrarch. Starting off with the Stegoi, I can only find one Stegoi character, and that was the first vampire to become part of the Stegoi bloodline. Now, I'm probably going to butcher this name wrong, but the Stegoi's name was Ushuran, and the little lore that we know about him is that he loves to ravage greenskins. So I think putting him in the Stegoi capital that is already in game, which being Morgheim, just makes perfect sense for him. I do think that Malagor will have to be moved ever so slightly to the west side of the map, maybe going to war against the Top Knots, because it seems pretty unlikely that they're going to have two legendary lords automatically fighting each other from turn 1. But apart from that, I think this is a perfect location for him. He's obviously near a lot of greenskins, which he's known for fighting, and it's a very unusual place for the vampire counts. You don't see them fighting many people outside of humans, so it's really nice to see another vampire lord in a very unique area. Now, moving on to the final bloodline, we have the Necrarch. I think this one is a little bit more obvious. I think the legendary lord here will be Zarkarus the Everliving. He will likely be the most powerful magic user in the Vampire Count's roster. A little bit squishy, probably not quite as squishy as a Necromancer, but still on that kind of level. But the magic damage that he can dish out would be insane. His start location, he is very well known for having a fortress in the Forest of Shadows. The Forest of Shadows isn't currently in game yet, but the Forest of Shadows is basically, it's northwest of the Middle Mountains, which is where the Brass Keep is. So if you add a list, it could be a magical forest or it could just be another settlement. I think a basic settlement is okay for this. This will give him Osterland as his starting enemy, and then he'll likely have to deal with Katerin later on, giving a little bit more of a vampire presence within Kislev itself. And that's it. That sums up the vampire counts. I think after that they will be completed. All of the bloodlines are now represented. There will be so many legendary lords by this point. There'll be a total of 9 vampire legendary lords, which is more than any other race in the game. I think it's Warriors of Chaos that's winning at the moment with 8. But I do see this as a possibility, and I think the vampires really do deserve it. They haven't got a lot of love. Since Warhammer 1, actually, they've not received anything apart from a semi-good rework. Now, I'm still going to go on to 2 other races in this video because I don't think I can really justify making them into an entire video by themselves. Now, the first race I want to be talking about is the Ogre Kingdoms. There are only 2 notable characters left in the Ogre Kingdoms. They didn't really have much of a character roster. The first one being Bragg the Gutsman. Now, the problem with Bragg is that he's a self-claimed executioner and he wanders the Warhammer world doing his own bidding. Sometimes he joins other tribes, but he never really commands his own. And I see him more of a legendary hero than a legendary lord. So that only leaves us 1 character left that could be added in as a 3rd playable legendary lord for the Ogre Kingdoms. And that character will be Golfag Maneater. Now, Golfag has literally been everywhere. He's been in the Empire, he's been in the World's Edge Mountains, he's been in the Border Princes, he's been everywhere. So his start location is a little bit open to suggestion, let's say. But he's not really on anyone's side. Like, for example, he was helping out the Empire and then he decided to steal the King's treasury. Like, he's not on any side, so he could be fighting literally anyone. But I think a good place for him to go would actually be in the World's Edge Mountains, specifically the settlement of Black Iron Mountain. There's a really nice big space there with a lot of legendary lords surrounding him. He could ally up with so many different people. He could help the Skaven, he could help the Dwarfs, he could help the Greenskins. Screw it, he could even help Skarbrand if Skarbrand's willing to negotiate. It puts him close-ish to Scrag, but I think it's far enough away for the experience to be vastly different, going up against so many different types of factions. I think it'll be a really nice place for him. Now, there's one more race that I think will be getting at least 1 more legendary lord, and that will be Norsca. And it's going to be a Khorne aligned Norsca, which will be Alberic's the Bloody. And I think going along my Norscan rework prediction video, I think he'll have to be near Valkyr. So I'm going to put him just at the northwest side of the Chaos Waste, bordering Nagorond, in the settlement of the Glacial Gardens. This will give him a nice few options. He'll obviously be very close to Valkyr to have a nice master to serve. You could go west into the rest of the Chaos Waste, acting a little bit like a Warriors of Chaos faction, going and taking all of that territory. Or you can go straight down south into Nagorond and taking on the minor Dark Elf factions before you decide to take on Khorne and Malekith. So yes, you're going to be facing the same enemies as you would with Valkyr the Bloody, but that's the whole point of the Vassals of Chaos prediction that I have for the Norscan rework. Now, with the races that we already have in game, I think the map is now almost complete. I know we're missing a lot of monogod factions. I think that's the only race that seriously does need some work. But yes, I know there are a few characters still missing from other races, but I think if Immortal Empiers was to end in the situation that I have presented now, excluding the DLC races, I think I would be generally quite happy with this, to be honest. This will be at least 3 years of work. I think if I counted correctly, I've added 26 legendary lords so far to this map. If we divide that up by, let's say, 3 legendary lords per race pack, that's at least 8 or 9 DLCs. That technically goes down to 8.6 DLCs. So assuming some of those are FLC characters, we're going to get about 8 DLCs. That's 3 years. If there's 3 DLCs a year, that's 3 years. That's a lot of work, and that's not including the DLC races that will come alongside this as well. So I think CA has got a really good starting point now for the next few years, and I think if the game was to get to this state, I think they've done a very, very good job. So next, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start working on the DLC races. I haven't decided which one I'm going to do yet. It's either going to be Ind or it's going to be the Dogs of War. Most likely the Dogs of War, because that's actually a 8th edition army book that I can work with. And then I'll move on to Ind, Koresh, and potentially other races that we could see in the future. I will go back to the demons, because yes, I know, I am aware, Slaanesh at the moment only has 2 legendary lords on my map. So I will need to add maybe the Mask somewhere and a couple of other lords that could be introduced. So I will go back to them at some point. But please leave your comments in the comment section down below on your thoughts on this. Do you like the vampire changes in particular? Because that was the main focus for this video. If you're enjoying this series, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.